morning, this is Georgia Raisman, and this is the Monday Scoop, your show for aging well over age 55. This morning, I have with me, luckily, Catherine Christian, who is the chief of the Elder Abuse section at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. And we're going to talk today about frauds and scams that are particularly hitting elderly people. This is important both for people who are at the younger end of just over age 55, because it's our parents who might be approached by these fraudsters, and also people who are at the upper end of people watching this, because you may be getting those phone calls from friendly people who say they're from Social Security and they want to take care of your check where there's a mistake, or those angry calls from the IRS saying that if you don't do something urgently, they're going to seize everything you own. So let me turn you over to Catherine, and let's talk about first, why are elderly people attractive to fraudsters?
Well, not to trivialize it, but you've heard the saying, Willie Sutton said he robs banks because that's where the money is. That's where the money is, or the perception is that seniors have money, more money than someone in their 30s. Why? Because if they're lucky, they had a good job and have a great pension. If they've reached the age for Social Security, they're getting that Social Security check every month. If they're fortunate and they own a home, a condo, they have equity in it, they probably paid off their mortgage. So there's a perception that that is where the money is. Also, unfortunately, as we age, and we all are going to age, our cognitive abilities are not as sharp as they used to be. Some could be 90 and be as sharp as ever, but we all age differently. So there's that perception or reality. Also, seniors tend to be more vulnerable. Your children are older and out of the household. As you get older, maybe your friends, your lifelong friends, are no longer with us. You become very lonely, and so you are more vulnerable to someone, on the phone wanting to have a conversation with you, and often that is the only conversation you've had with anyone that day. So it's attractive targets, seniors are.
So the kinds of scams that happen for people in that age group can be everything from people who say they're going to take care of your driveway because they're in the neighborhood with asphalt and they're doing other people's driveways, so they'll do yours. Is that right?
Yes, it runs the gamut. We've seen the top three, if there's a top three, the grandparent scam.
Tell me about the grandparent scam.
It's as simple as, "Hi, Grandma, this is me." And then you make the mistake of saying, "David, is that you?" And of course, whoever the person is, they're going to say, "Yes, I'm David." Or they will pretend to be a friend of your grandchild. And they will have a lot of information about your grandchild. So it must be true. How would they know that David graduated from Yale? How do they know that he just had a birthday party? Because unfortunately, our grandchildren put way too much information about themselves on social media. So that tugging in the heart, you hear your grandchild is in danger, immediately, basically your rational thought leaves you. And of course, what do they want? How can you help your grandchild? Money. And I always say when I give presentations, if they start asking you for money, that's when you know it's a scam, hang up the phone. But we've seen too many grandparents, or even aunts and uncles who have beloved nieces and nephews, who fall victim to people saying, "He's been in an accident, he's in jail and needs money, please immediately wire money, give me your credit card, I'll make it easy for you," or we'll have someone come to your home and pick up the cash after you go to the bank.
So
that's a very
the common
big scam.
denominator is that they're asking for money fairly quickly.
Money,
and it's
yes.
usually that they want your credit card, or they want your bank account information,
Yes.
or something.
Or you can go to the bank and get the cash and tell us when you have it and we'll come pick it up from you.
Really?
Yes, we've had that happen too.
So a way that one can protect oneself against that particular kind of thing is simply by saying, I'm not giving money over the phone.
Hang up the phone. If you really are concerned about your grandchild, call the grandchild, call your own children, and I'm telling you 10 times out of 10, they'll say, "Mom, Dad, that's a scam, it's not true. Grandma, that's a scam, it's not true." Because I can understand, you might say, well, suppose this is real. Don't deal with the person on the phone. Call your family member.
The other thing that can happen, I guess, is especially if we have older parents and they're living in Arizona and we're here, or far away, and they're with a home health care person or an attendant that we don't know personally or we haven't met personally, they can have access to our parents' funds either through powers of attorney, or simply signing a check that the bank doesn't look at the signature very closely. So what do you suggest about guarding against something like that?
Well, first we'll start with the majority of home health care aides are honest, caring
That's
people.
undoubtedly true.
Unfortunately, other prosecutors prosecute many home health care aides who use their access to the senior who might have cognitive impairment, might not be physically mobile, so they're in the bathroom or the bedroom, and then the home health care aide says, oh, that's where they keep their checks. That's where they keep their credit cards. What you can do as a child, an adult child, first of all, don't treat your parent like they're a child. Just sort of very easily, you know, want to check your checking statements, your credit card statements, mom, dad. It's a pain in the neck for me, let me make it easy for you. Just sort of keep an eye on it. Put alerts, convince your parents. We should all have this. Alerts on our credit cards, on our checking. Put limits on how much you can take out per month out of an ATM machine.
Tell me about that experience you had.
That
was
I had
such
a
an
personal
amazing
experience. It was a weekend. I'm very, people call it anal. I'm always checking my balance. And so a Sunday after running, I went to take money out of the ATM, and I try to go to my actual bank so I don't get charged fees. And when I went to withdraw money, I saw that my checking balance was very low. And I was like, how can my checking balance be so low? And then I looked at the recent transactions, and someone in Manila, Philippines, from Friday morning to that Sunday was literally almost every hour just taking out money.
Oh my gosh.
And I immediately ran, called the bank, you know, had to identify myself, which is the reverse. If someone calls you and pretend to be the bank, that's a trick. And they told me that someone must have used a skimming device on my debit card, which I used at a pharmacy or a store, and made a duplicate of my card, and then just went wild in the Philippines. And what I didn't know at the time, because I was very angry at my bank, I said, how could you let all that money go out in one day?
Don't you know I'm not in the Philippines?
Yeah. And they said, well, you don't have a limit on how much you can withdraw every day. So I now have the most I can take out, or anyone can take out, is $300 a day out of an ATM machine. I also put an alert on. I told them, if I ever leave the country, which is rare, I will let you know. If I leave the state outside of the tri-state area, I will let you know. Because that way it'll be, and the worst that can happen is I forget to tell them, and then I'm a little bit embarrassed because my card is declined. But I'd rather have that than someone do what they did. Now I got the money back, it was great, but it took a while to get the money back, and that came right out of my account.
And a person who's elderly might not even know that this had been taken from their account. So they wouldn't.
Because they wouldn't even check. If I keep thinking, suppose that Sunday I decided not to go check and I waited till the following Sunday, and then suddenly all my checks would be bouncing because I wouldn't have noticed that all of my money was being drained out of my checking account. So you have to be diligent and check, put those alerts on. Most banks, all legitimate banks, are very cooperative. And most banks also have flags now for financial exploitation. So they look at the age of the customer, and if they suddenly see unusual activity, like this customer's never done online, this customer very rarely goes to an ATM, and suddenly they're going to an ATM, they themselves will take it upon it, sort of to shut the account down and reach out to the senior.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. Was that
out.
mandated by a law?
It wasn't mandated. It's more. It should be mandated. It wasn't mandated. About in 2011. The federal government gave an advisory to all financial institutions and said, look out for these red flags of elder financial exploitation and be proactive with your customers and protect them. And I have to say, most banks are very good about protecting. Most of the referrals we get often come from banks or adult protective services who have been alerted by banks who saw some suspicious activity.
Now, you mentioned something in passing. What are these skimmers? Who? A
card skimmer is I learned this when it happened to me, is you use your bank, your card, and even with the. And I remember being upset because, they have a chip now.
Right.
And I remember when I got a chip on my card, I said, oh, this is great. This will never happen to me. Even the chips aren't immune to
They
it.
can be
so you either slide your card or the chip, because my ATM debit card was a chip. And, people who are criminals can find a way. So wherever I used that card, someone was able to find out what my PIN number was and duplicate it. Since that time, I very, very rarely use my debit card to make purchases. I use the credit card because the worst that can happen is, Amex will say, look, all this you charged, and I say, no, I didn't. But there's no money coming immediately out of my checking account.
Right.
I'm not saying never use it, because there are times you have to use it, but I've been very careful. I said, well, I'll just use the credit card.
Debit cards are not as user-friendly as credit cards are in terms of
because the good thing about it is you're not owing money, because you're basically giving cash to pay the payment, which is why I like doing it.
Right.
The negative is if someone takes $10,000 out, you have to deal with your bank, and you're not going to get your money back for a week.
Yeah.
But it's pros and cons.
Well, the other kinds of financial problems that elderly people run into are the ones we talked about, where people will call up, and a stranger will call up and say you've won a lottery, and your general advice about that is if you haven't entered the lottery, you don't remember the lottery, or
trust me, you didn't win, no matter what they say. And the key you didn't win is when they ask you for money. You'll have to pay a fee. You'll have to pay the taxes. That's when you know it's a trick.
This is the same thing as the email of the Nigerian prince who just needs
It is not true. Any time you get a phone call and they're asking for money, you know it's a scam. And we see that a lot. And people, we all want to win. So you're like, oh, wow, I won. And all I have to do is pay you $5,000 to get my million? You didn't win. And so now that thief now has $5,000. So it's that, part of us wanting to win that money, the other part, maybe not being so aware cognitively that this must be a scam, but it is definitely a scam. You are never going to get a phone call telling you that you won a sweepstakes, and it's true. You did not win the lottery. It's just not true.
So, and also people do appeal to our charitable instincts, right?
Exactly.
And for something like the police benevolent whatever.
Yeah, and the police departments, fire departments do not call you and say, please give us money for our agency. That is not true. And people, I love my police officers, I love my fire department. Of course I want to give them. It's not going to be through a phone call. And the police departments go out and they tell the same way I do, you're going to get a call from us, do not give money. Same thing with phony charities. I always say, if we all want to give to charities, do it the way you've always done it. Find them yourself online, write your checks. But you never know who that person calling you is. They could disguise their voice. You don't know who's on the other side of the phone. So be skeptical and just say, I'm sorry, I'm just not that I don't trust you, but I don't, but you're not going to get my credit card number, and you're not going to get my banking number.
You can ask for people to mail things to you. Yeah. If you're from a genuine charity, please just send it to the mail.
Or you look up the charity yourself and do it. My law school, my college call me often and ask me to give money. I give money every year, but not over the phone. I do it the old-fashioned way. And I know it's much cheaper for them to take my credit card number and do it that way than to send me an invoice. But I don't know who that person is on the phone. You can Google anyone and find out who they are. And so I don't know whether that person on the phone Googled me and then found out where I went to school. Right. So I just rather not trust and just do it the old-fashioned way and write a check and send it to where I usually send it.
Now, we mentioned something about cognitive impairment before, and people do become cognitively impaired, especially with regard to money and math. And I was reading somewhere about the possibility that older people, as they get significantly older, start mixing up sums of money, the difference between 50 and 500, or 500 and 5,000, or 5,000 and 50,000. And in terms of prosecuting, that must become very difficult.
Or their memory. I forgot that just 2 days ago I gave this person, $1,000.
Yeah.
And so now I'm going to give another 1,000. Or I gave the charity just 2 days ago $50, and so I'm going to give another. Yeah, no,
when that becomes, it must be hard to tell when that actually becomes fraudulent. If you have and say it's a family member who preys on another family member, does it become preying on when it's a niece, for example, who happens to live near an elderly relative, and they talk the elderly relative into giving them $20,000? And then is that elderly relative's mind impaired enough not to know it's $20,000 and not $200?
It depends, and unfortunately, 90% of the financial exploitation of elderly are done by people they know. Family members, friends, people who work for them. If that senior, that elderly person has diminished capacity, basically, they really don't have an understanding of their finances. They can't tell you that they have a checking account or where the checking account is. They can't tell you how much money they have. They can't really balance a checkbook or even make, when they go out to eat, figure out how to do a tip, even with a calculator. They probably do not have the capacity to give over $20,000. Now, the proof is, we have a burden of proof, that niece would have to know that. So if the niece, and if it's someone who's really close, you're going to know that your aunt, your godmother, you know, the elderly neighbor really does not have the ability to understand that I'm giving you a check for $20,000. And we would prosecute that. Again, it depends on the facts. Now, on the other side, we all, no matter how old we get, have a right to make incredibly bad financial decisions.
Right.
So yes, I know this niece is unemployed, and yes, she's never had a job in her life, but you know, she's my niece, I wanted to give her the money.
Right.
Completely legal, might be silly, but it's her money,
Right.
it's her life.
Right.
It's only if she didn't know what she was doing. But if she knew, here she goes again asking for money, maybe this time she'll do something good with it.
Right.
That's not a crime. That's just, you know,
Bad
be
judgment,
silly,
and you're
bad
entitled
judgment.
to bad judgment.
You're entitled to bad judgment.
Yeah.
It's when they really had no idea. They didn't know that the $20,000 now left them with $1,000 of their savings.
Yeah.
So they have no clue that they just cleaned themselves out. That's when it becomes criminal.
Yeah. Well, getting back to plain old scams, I mean, one that you were talking about was that sometimes people are preyed upon because they have certain religious or superstitious beliefs.
Yes, you know, it depends. You know, you have someone who's suspicious, who believes in evil spirits, who whatever, and someone in their life, usually a stranger, will sort of, you know, I understand, will overhear you talking about your children or your grandchildren, and then they'll come up to you, you know, you have a son named Jeffrey, and I hear he's doing very well, but you know, I think he might be in danger, you know, and we can pray. You can give me some jewelry, and I can pray on it, or some money, and then we can, you know, sort of hope that he gets better. And then, of course, the elderly person goes to their home, gets the jewelry, gets the money, puts it in a bag, and then, of course, that bag is given to someone else and replaced with a bag of rocks. So that happens in some communities where you fall for that.
It's
which
very
is
hard
very
to figure
sad.
out how to keep that from happening unless you're...
It's very hard, other than to go around to the communities and tell them if someone approaches you on the street and says this is not true, no matter what they say. Well, they knew so much about my child because they probably were following around you when you were sitting in the park, and they overheard you talking about it. Because what happens is, the reason why the senior might believe it's true, like, how do they know this? How do they know this information? Because they overheard you, or again, social media, they saw, you know, the photo that your granddaughter put up of the great, you know, dinner that she was at with her friends celebrating her 18th birthday party. So they're going to tell you, oh, I was at that 18th birthday party at that great club, and blah, blah, blah. So you're going to think, oh, it must be true. And it's not. When they ask for money, you know it's not true.
So if you were going to give somebody a takeaway, the single thing that they could either themselves or tell their elderly person to make sure they always did or that they never did, what would the takeaway be? What would the scoop be?
If it sounds good to be true, it isn't. But hang up. I always, when I go to senior centers, I say, hang up. It's old school. You're supposed to be polite. Hello, is this Miss Christian? And you're supposed to say yes. And then they start talking. You say, oh, I'm so sorry. You hang up. I never confirm my identity. If you call me, I'm not talking about at work, if you call me at home and you say, hello, is this Miss Christian? I'm like, who are you? Because I want to know who you are, and if you don't tell me, then I know something's wrong, so I hang up the phone. Soon as they ask for money, that's when you know it's a scam. You know, someone's in trouble, I need money. You won a lottery, when can I get my money? Well, first you have to pay. There's something, you have a computer virus. Oh, how do you get rid of it? You have to pay. So it's always going to be, you have to give money, you have to send money. And that's how you know it's a scam.
No personal information, no money, no credit
Never
cards,
give over to, your bank will never call you and say, Ms. Christian, we see a problem with your account, but we want to verify it's you. Could you give us your social security number and your date of birth? Right. No. If you call the bank, that's different because they need to verify it's you. But they're calling you, you don't know who this person is.
And Social Security is not going to call you and say we have a problem with your check.
We were notified earlier this year that there's a scam going around where someone's calling and identifying themselves as being a part of the Social Security Administration, and they're saying we need to get your a new Social Security card, so could you please give us your number, or we're going to arrest you, we're going to sue you, we're going to stop your check. That is not true. The Social Security Administration is not going to call you and demand to give over your identifying information or demand money.
And nor will the IRS.
And neither will the IRS. That is not true. No matter how professional they sound or how scary they sound, it is not true. It is a scam.
So skepticism. Don't give away any information and hang up.
Calls about something in your iCloud, which is, and you have to call immediately or your iPhone will be shut down. Also, never call back the number. When you get those voicemails saying, please call back that number, never call it back. Because it is, and it might come up if you Google the number, oh, it is Apple. It isn't. There's a way to spoof numbers. So don't call back. It's annoying, the calls, but it'll be much more annoying if you fall victim to the scam and lose your money. Just hang up the phone.
That's the point. Well, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for coming and sharing all this.
My
I'm sure
pleasure.
It's going to be extremely helpful to people. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Well, next time on the Monday Scoop, we're going to be talking with Pam Belloc, who is a reporter for the New York Times, and she'll be helping us stay away from false health and science information online. Thank you.